hope you're well. This message goes out to my fellow neurodivergent musicians. I'm a neurodivergent musician. My name is John Hart. I have ADHD, autism and dyslexia. I found out about my dyslexia back in uni in 2004, but then went through a mental health crisis in 2021 and then found out about the ADHD and autism. Then kind of started like a 3-year unofficial degree into neurodiversity and podcast, books and all sorts of stuff, trying to search for communities. I went to ADHD, I went to all sorts of stuff, but then trying to talk about the music side, and it was lost really. So I went on a quest and I built awareness assets I built a neurodivergent album. I built the Neurodivergent Musician podcast. So like the first 30 episodes, it basically was just about me processing what was going on. And I broke it up into like a traffic light format, and it was, like the red section was like insights that I'd found out and stuff. And the yellow section was my lived experience, and I called it improvised babble. And the beautiful thing about it was I was just able to talk like I'm doing now. And then the green section at the end was a recommendation, because I'd listened to all these podcasts and I'd just extracted the best bits of what I liked and stuff as well. And then sort of later episodes it have been guests that have been coming on, because once I found out about the ADHD and autism, and I found it out post mental health crisis and psychiatric assessment, it was a massive shock, because I've been running on the wrong internal operating system, and I found out I was running out like 50% capacity but with 200% output, which I think majority of a lot of neurodivergents are doing. Because on the outside, and especially if you're level 1 autism, or you kind of look normal on the outside, but on the inside there's internal chaos and things going on. And anyway, it started my whole journey, and I processed everything I was going through a creative outlet, which was the album and the podcast. And then sort of started building up a community with Alex Dudley, and then basically started trying to run free communities on Facebook and WhatsApp. And you kind of attract spammers and bots and lurkers and betas, people coming in basically to just try and hook people and all sorts of stuff. And also just running the groups was exhausting anyway, especially for a neurodivergent brain, and you haven't got a team around you. So, I've been looking at this way of doing things, because within the music industry, there's a lot of awareness about mental health. And it's really, really important, obviously, with mental health. But to me and my exploration, and this is kind of like my mission, is that if you took like the iceberg effect, that mental health symptoms, from anxiety, stress, depression, which again I had all of them, addiction, all of it, they are what I call like at the top of the iceberg, and that's what everybody can see most of the time. But for neurodivergence, the underbelly, what's at the core, is the neurodivergent conditions, is the things that we're masking all the time, because we're trying to fit in, or we don't want to cast ourselves out. And then for the most of the music industry, then you start relying on unhealthy coping mechanisms, or what I call UCMs, which kind of sounds like an STD, but it's just like, I don't want a UCM. And and that's when I realized, even things like alcohol, I gave up alcohol 2 years ago because of my sleep, and because it affects my mental health. And then I gave up caffeine because when I went on the ADHD medication, which for me is not a permanent thing, it's a stabilizer internally for me to then be able to build the life I need to be able to wean off of them. And there's lots of other things, social media, phones, so many different things, which what I call like the invisible dopamine monster. And it's really fascinating. But what I found is that my whole life I was just blissfully ignorant about my internal state. And sometimes you can then start blaming external. It's just like, why are these things not happening? Because it's, and I'm airing it out loud to whatever it is, people, the music industry, I don't know, all sorts of things. And not realizing I'm getting triggered by these things, and I have no control over anything else. I only have control of what's going on. So And the neurodivergent side of it, once I found out about the ADHD and autism and the mental health crisis recovery, it then invited me inwards, which then got darker and deeper, and it was hell. But I then went almost past my neurodiversity, and I went into introspection, and I went in deeper and deeper and deeper. And then the realization is that instead of building outside in, where I need to have my external life, sorted, I need to get money, I need to be able to build my career and get my big break and all that other stuff, and then it will fulfill me internally, that would be a never-ending game, because even if I reached the level I needed to, I needed more. And my realization going through mental, loads, crises and all sorts of stuff, it is inside out. It's like unfolding a jumper and then realizing there's loads of dirt on the other side. And then acceptance, and actually getting right to the source, right to the core of who we truly are. No mask, no BS, none of that anymore. Or, shining lights in dark areas and stuff. So anyway, I started up recently the Neurodivergent Musicians community on Skool, Skool. And I, toss and turn between giving it a free community, but again, it's one of those, I don't want to attract the wrong people, and I want to get dedicated neurodivergent musicians, but I also want to be accessible from grassroots upwards. So I've set it at $9 a month. You get access to the community, peer-to-peer community. There's also something called Friday feedback on there, so you can put a link up there, or you can share whatever you're doing and you get some feedback from me or the rest of the community. I'm building resources, but I'm also collaborating with a lot of other people to build these resources. And then also I've got the Neurodivergent Musician podcast. So what I thought was, instead of, you see a lot of these podcasts and they need to get superstars or whatever it is to boost the profile and the metrics. I was like, I don't give a toss about metrics and stuff as much as I used to, because it was dopamine. Now I want to use the podcast as a way to give back to the community. So, if you do join the Neurodivergent Musician Skool community, you also get an opportunity to come onto the podcast. And it's not an interview. You can just come on and we can just have a casual chat. Now, at the moment, because, the community numbers are low, we can do it one-to-one. But if this thing blows, because, they say 80% of musicians suffer with mental health issues, according to Help Musicians UK and Musicians Union, obviously here in the UK. But, there's a lot of musicians who go, well, aren't all musicians neurodivergent? Well, I don't think all of them are, but majority, I believe, are. And that's not labeling anyone, that's not assuming. It's just the creative wiring, instead of calling myself ADHD, autism and dyslexia, my ADHD is, a creative spark plug. My autism is a creative sculpture. My dyslexia is a creative problem solver. And I sort of find, sorry, there's people behind me, that, using sort of creative labels or whatever it is much more empowering. So I call myself a creative being, rather than, I say in my profile neurodivergent things as well, because, again, it's sharing exactly, who I am, but I don't see it as an identity. I see it as a lens that I process my core self through. I believe my creativity and my music are my primary languages, and then the way I talk or the way I write, the way I feel is, my secondary. And, with creativity and music, it's untapped. No one has any influence and things over it. I pretty much write my music because I'm processing my life through my guitar. So anyway, I've gone off on lots of tangents there. Well, it's not a tangent, I call it creative talking. But the idea here is that I want to create a community that's not just your standard Facebook group. It's not, one of those things you enroll in and we're just completely head focused as musicians. We're trying to get up the ladder. We need the blueprint. We need the, you know, that sort of dopamine fix where we are paying ads to be able to get to here and there and all that sort of stuff as well. I've tried it. I've done it all. I've seen all the online magical music gurus, and I sort of see myself as, especially with my neurodivergent brain, I'm like, these things can work initially, but they can fall off a cliff. What we need is actual sort of support and help on the ground, right? We need to put, like, you know, the terms, preach what I teach, put my money where my mouth is and stuff. And by joining the community, the most realistic, tangible result that I can give someone straight away, it's not just like, here's a list of things that you've got to do with your neurodivergent brain. Here's this like extra thing that you've got to buy here and stuff. No, that's not going to help. You know, might help down the line. But what I can do is give you a podcast episode that you can come on. You can then have a conversation about whatever it is you're going on in your life, or, you know, as a neurodivergent musician, neurodivergence is personal. The musician part can be business, but also can be personal. But the beauty is here is that we get to unmask, then we get to feel seen, and we get to feel heard, validated. It's a safe space, and we don't, you know, I'm very aware. This is the thing, having a lived experience with it, rather than theorizing neurodivergence, rather than, you know, reading up about it or seeing it from outside point of view. The thing with that process is, and maybe neurotypicals do this, is those people can switch off, like as a job. Okay, yeah, I've learned about that, now I can just get on with how I actually run. But as neurodivergent, this is for the rest of our lives. So it's one of those things then that I come from this point of view of, I completely get it, I understand it, because it's a lived experience first. Before I ever went into some training for coaching, whether it's and stuff as well, I'm coming to meet you where you are in the present, rather than the past or the future. And it's basically what you have now, the tools you have now, the language you have now, the resources, the assets, the people, the network, whatever it is. Basically, you're not too much, you're not enough, which that's always feel. You won't feel misunderstood. You know, I felt that my whole life, like a black swan in all different areas and things. And since unmasking, and since just being my true, rawest, realest, unfiltered self sometimes. You know, I come from a working class background. I used to work in factories and stuff. I used to swear all the time. And then it kind of straightened up over time, because you can't do that in society and stuff. And I was just like, right, now, you know, I'm not swearing all the time, but it's just one of those where these things where I call myself wonky fruit or wonky veg, you know, the stuff that all the supermarkets throw out. And it feels very neurodivergent to do that, because everything must be polished. Everything must be straight, you know. And at the moment here, right, I'm in the middle of the woods, and you're getting a full-on, what I call verbal bus express ride conversation here. Well, me just chatting to the camera. And it's where I go out of the station. You've joined me, you know. You've got no choice if you're still listening and watching. But if we're going on the bus, I'm describing what I see out the window, which is all the colours, all the textures, all the people, right? And some people could call that tangents, convoluted, monologuing, jabbering, I've heard many times. But I call it creative talking. I'm using all the colours at my disposal, you know. I'm not what I call, if I went on a conversation, I went on the underground, on the tube, right? No one looks at each other. Everything you look out the window is pretty bland. Or if you're on a train that's going really, really, really fast, you know, everything's blurry. So, you know, I bypass small talk and I just talk it how it is. Anyway, that was a side quest. So just talking about the woods here, right? Everything is perfect. And all these roots and things as well remind me of my brain, right? It looks like a brain. And this is why it's the power of also coming out in nature. And I actually am being, right, where emulate this environment online, which is really hard to do. And that's what I want to develop in Skool. So, you know, I wanted to kind of put the pricing, the initial pricing, it's $9 a month, right? And like I said, there's lots of things you get out of it. You're not just coming into what equivalent of a Facebook group. And then what I'm going to be building is an academy, okay? And that's where it's going to be courses and stuff as well. And then that's another tier. And then there's mentoring. You know, if you want to go into neurodivergent musician mentoring, but I meet you as a peer first, right? And as a peer, I'm in the trenches. I am a music artist. I'm not just, you know, one of those tutors, mentors, coaches who sort of does the teaching of it and things as well, but they're not actually doing it themselves. And, you know, I'm working on my next album at the moment. I am out here advocating for neurodivergent musicians as best as I can. I'm going through a storm in my life right now with divorce and all sorts of stuff as well, where my life is changing. So I'm not coming in as an expert. I am coming in as that grounded anchor that a lot of us neurodivergent musicians need. And it's also one of those that I'm not forcing, I'm not chasing, I'm not, you know, baiting anybody, and it's there if people need it. If they don't, or they need to reach out for whatever it is, that's absolutely fine. I've had so many people reach out from the podcast, from the album, and all sorts of stuff, and it's been overwhelming. And that's where I was just like, oh, I need to have a place, a hub. And we've got a few neurodivergent musician community champions in there. So even when you come into the Skool community, you'll be welcomed, you'll be supported. You won't just be like, you know, in real life, dropped off at a place and then someone just drives off and you're wondering, well, how do I go? What do I do? And you're walking in sort of tentatively. And also, it's just like, oh, is this just another bog standard community and stuff as well? No, I want this to be a hub, because the term neurodivergent musician is not used in the music industry. And if there's a majority of neurodivergent musicians, and, you know, it can be quite a niche subject, but it's not niche because there's a majority of us. So I've seen something that is missing, and it needed to connect with my head, heart and soul, and purpose as well. You know, I survived 4 crises, not only for my children, but to come back and serve those who, you might be diagnosed, you might be going through that diagnostic process, which is what someone called relief, right? And that's a mix between grief and relief. You might be discovering, oh, I have ADHD and I have autism, and then, or especially with the ADHD thing going on at the moment, where the assessments and things have just gone sky high, and then you've got people jumping in calling it a trend, and we're over, you know, assessing people and diagnosing stuff as well, without knowing. I think it's something like 5 million, there's 5 million ADHDers in the UK, but there's only something like 1 to 2 million people that have been diagnosed. So it's not an over-diagnosis, it's under-diagnosed. So, you know, and there's obviously so much news out there and noise and things as well. So I want to create a place where it's free from stigma, it's free from ableism. You know, I've been a guitar teacher for 20 years, and I changed my mindset with that. I then changed it to well-being guitar sessions, right? And then I created something called Acute Guitar Circle, which is on Skool as well. And the purpose of that is that you don't see the pupil, you don't see them as a number that they've got to practice and they've got to do this. No, you meet the person where they are. And by doing that, I tapped into what do they want out of this, rather than the grades and all these other, you know, formatted and solid structures and curriculums and things as well. It's building something that fits for everybody. You know, I know in this world, it's not a one size fits all. And this is why also with the Neurodivergent Musicians School, I have for the first time set up what I call a container, you know, like a space for all of us to create, to build together. Because I don't want it to be gated. I don't want it to feel like that. I want people to be able to get back what they put in, you know, and especially if you're an independent musician as well, especially if you're a neurodivergent independent musician and you haven't gone down record labels. You know, it doesn't matter if you've gone down record labels or management or whatever it is. There is a space here where we can build an academy of resources together. We can start a mission to be able to make serious change within the music industry. You know, level up the awareness of neurodivergence alongside mental health. You know, and you know, I hear the likes of like Robbie Williams and things talk about his neurodivergence and mental health. And then sort of when he was talking about Liam Payne, and he had a late diagnosis of ADHD and stuff as well. And then you look at the fatalities out of all these things. It's like something's got to change. And, you know, it's why I stopped calling it the Neurodivergent Musician. I was like, no, I don't want this to fall on my head. This is not a one-person mission. This is multi, right? This is worldwide. And the idea is as well, you know, even looking at funding routes, right? Because there's so many different funding routes, but there's so much red tape around it. And for neurodivergence, even just trying to do the applications for funding and stuff as well is absolute, like, mission. You know, and I've got some areas and I've failed in others, and it's so deflating, so much RSD. I'd love to build a funding pot that everybody from grassroots up to the top gets access to, you know, and I don't know the how yet. I'm building the what and why, and I'm doing everything I can, but that's why I want to give an invitation not only to the community, you know, and the subscriptions just to keep the lights on. It's to keep the Skool sub going. And also, you know, I plow in lots of hours and stuff as well with it, but also it invites people who you might be a neurodivergent musician, but you might want to get involved with something. You might have a skill set that with social media, marketing, or people skills, or whatever it is, that you can come in and you can actually build this team, this organization that is so well needed. And once we then build up the mission, it will then become a movement. And, you know, I want to fight to be able to get funding, accessibility, you know, not just the head focused stuff where, you know, I go and connect with that person and network, and then I get up here and all sorts of stuff. No, it's, you know, even looking away from streaming and you know, getting 0.003 penny, whatever it is. It's like, actually, how can we go back to selling our things, you know, getting true fans who come and spend, you know, £10, $10, whatever it is and stuff, where you receive an email and a name and things as well, and you contact them and with the most extreme, immense gratitude, because that person has taken their time to reach out to you and things. That is what inside out living will be like with this and things. And anyway, I wanted to share that. This is a full-on sort of podcast episode with it anyway, but I do believe this is the way forward. And like I said, I've tried lots of different things already, but I really do want to create something where, you know, we can all belong, but also we can not only talk about our musician side, but we can talk maybe about the side that possibly other people don't understand, or there's a lot of stigma, or there's a lot of things, confusion, and no, we just need some clear water. We need some clarity and closure and different things. But like I said, meeting you, especially in the community, where you are in the present, with what you have, not what you don't have, whether we look at outsourcing those things, or finding ways to be able to, educate or, guide, however it is. Because if we look too far in the future, if we look too far up above in regards to, I want to be able to play at X venue, I want to be able to headline things as well, which is like a marathon, we got to back up and figure out all the steps. We've got to break it down. And sometimes that can be really difficult for just one person. And that's where you can brainstorm within the community. You can come with the most, like this is the idea, neurodivergent musicians, like transforming millions worldwide. That's go big or go home mentality. And I think that is the special power of a neurodivergent brain, where not grounding the plane, not having others' fears and anxieties ground it in a way where they're going, oh, I'm not sure about that, oh, no, try this, as a form of fake authority to try and protect me. But actually, I've gone through so much, and that it's okay to dream big. It's also okay to dream in my 40s. That doesn't have to just be a childhood thing. And that's what I want for everybody else as well. And because then if we can get the essence of your why, we can then figure out your how. With your why, you can build immense purpose. And by having purpose, you can have a North Star, right? And by having a North Star, we don't need to have everything plotted. We can just have a few markers, build up a tribe around it, figure out the resources, and the fuel and stuff, whether that's financial, whether that's networking, whatever it is. But it starts with your why and purpose. And I think as neurodivergent musicians, as creative beings, we've got that wonderful skill set. It's just going into the right environment, right? Like I am here in the woods. And I think this is the way forward. So if you're up for it, or if you know another musician who, by the way, you don't have to be diagnosed. You can be self-diagnosed, undiagnosed. You can be curious about neurodiversity. You don't have to come in knowing everything. You don't have to come in not even knowing yourself, or there's confusion around it. Because what I try to avoid is giving out advice. Because I have no right to give someone else advice, because we are all living this journey. Yes, some of us might have experienced things as well, but we're all unique, we're all different, and this is why I don't believe it's an identity, because I believe everybody at their core is completely different. We've got different backgrounds, different genes and things as well, but it's the filter that I see the world, and that's my ADHD, autism and dyslexia. But I see them as creative things at the same time. So if this resonates, if you've got through this creative talking verbal bus express ride with me, then I don't know, there's a link somewhere, John Hart Music, JONHART music.com/NDMS, which is NDMs, and that's NDM is my short version of neurodivergent musician. And you can come over to the school, get involved. Whether you're a participant, a member, or you're looking for help, or you want to help others, or you want to be a bit of both, you want to be a hybrid, or you want to help out and then train up to be this, or whatever it is. It's like a physical community where we're going out and we're building something all together. And it's going to be incredibly special. And so this is early days. I only just released this like last week. So there's only a few members in at the moment. So the first people who can get up to 50, 100, you will be able to get your own podcast episode with me. But in future, if we've got loads and loads and loads of people in there, we may have to do group podcast episodes, because it'd just be too much and I'll probably get burnt out and stuff. So like I said, go into the description or wherever the comment is, johnhartmusic.com. You can go there as well. Check me out if you kind of want to go, who is this guy? How does he have the authority to be able to tell me all this and things as well? I don't. I'm coming in as a peer. And then you can go to johnhartmusic.com or johnhartmusic.com/NDMS, or head on over to Skool, which is a platform, an app, and type in Neurodivergent Musicians. Come and say hello, DM me, message me, email me, whatever it is. I apologize for some who have reached out to me already. It does take a bit of time, and I try and figure out things and stuff. This is why I need a team for this and stuff. So, but anyway, I hope you have a lovely day. Thank you so much for watching, listening, and have a wonderful weekend or wonderful week, morning, afternoon, evening. Speak soon. Take care.